Hi guys, I recently started playing Killer for the first time since I've owned Dead by Daylight, for 2 years now, and I wanted to make a quick guide on how to reach rank 1. It took me approximately 2 days to go from rank 20 to rank 1 with Wraith, and prior to that I spent about a day just trying to figure out which killer I even wanted to main. Hillbilly was actually recommended to me a lot for a newbie killer, but I found that his ability, the chainsaw run, could be easily countered by just a smart survivor doing a sharp turn, or just being in a small map like the lab or the school. So he wasn't really the best fit for me. I'm just assuming that people who are watching this already have a basic understanding of who Wraith is. So I'm going to go ahead and put timestamps in the description so that you can go ahead and skip to the specific bits of information that you specifically want to hear. I ultimately decided to go with Wraith as a new killer, despite his intermediate rating, is because of his high mobility and map control potential. His power, the Wailing Bell, renders him almost invisible and also gives him a 150% speed boost as well as no terror radius. During this time, he's only able to interact with pallets, lockers, destructible walls, things like that. But while uncloaked, Wraith has a 115% run speed, and he's able to actually attack survivors. Now knowing this, I realized that Wraith would be, he would greatly be able to watch generator progression, as he's able to quickly make his way across the map. Whereas someone like the Trapper heavily relies on players walking to a specific trap on a specific part of the map, whereas the Wraith's high mobility allows him to control where survivors go and what they do. Wraith, however, is that he can be pretty terrible in long chases. As a mouse 1 killer, he has just one way to damage survivors, and it requires him to be at a pretty close range. Therefore, getting a hit on a survivor needs to be well worth that time spent on chasing them. As a Wraith main, you need to know when a chase will be worth it, and when to give up on the chase to focus on other objectives. I'll go into depth about this in a moment, but firstly let's talk about the Wraith's build and how it is integral and how well he can control the map. The main perks I take on Wraith are Thanaphobia, Hex, No One Escapes Death, Surge, and Sloppy Butcher. Now the first 3 perks are pretty interchangeable. You could take Hex Ruin instead of Surge, or Pop Goes the Weasel instead of Thanaphobia, etc. But I honestly think that Sloppy Butcher is non-negotiable for my playstyle, which is a sort of hit and run style. Sloppy Butcher causes the mangled and hemorrhage effect, causing survivors to bleed much heavier, and therefore making it easier to track them, and it also slows healing, which therefore will also slow generator completion. So pairing Sloppy Butcher with Thanaphobia, which slows repair, sabotage, and cleansing, speeds up to 20% for each injured survivor, can considerably slow the survivors down, thus giving more time to kill them off. It is a sort of last resort perk that I use if I've had a particularly bad game, but I try to avoid having to rely on it for kills, because a highly skilled survivor can quickly bait you out of those 4 kills, or find and cleanse the Noed totem. When you are using Noed, however, just make sure to hook any down survivors as far away from the exit gates as possible. Staying within the vicinity is a good idea, but you don't want to just idly sit in front of them, aka camping. But you want to go ahead and make sure that no survivors are able to get the chance to open any of the other gates. Doing so could potentially set up a rescue for said hooked survivor. Now, for items, I typically take the Bone Clapper, which makes it so that the noise the wailing bell makes echoes and distorts to the point that survivors can no longer discern the distance or the position that you're approaching them from. This is actually great for confusing survivors when you approach them from an odd angle while obscured by a wall or a large rock, as they will have no clue from which direction you're approaching them. Another item I take, which is insanely OP and very useful for Wraith, is the All-Seeing Blood add-on. This allows you to see the aura of survivors when they are within a 12-meter range. This is amazing for Wraith because it makes something that Wraith is inherently bad at, looping around structures, to an advantage. As you can see here, I can see the Meg's aura through the wall, and I can therefore predict in which direction she's going to secure the hit. If I have neither of those available, I usually take the Coxcomb Clapper, which makes the bell completely silent, or any of the Blank and Swift Hunt add-ons, which affects his disappearance and reappearance times, or the Ghost add-on, which suppresses his red stain and terror radius for 6 seconds after uncloaking. For offerings, I usually take either the Split Coin, which gets rid of chests on the map, the Shroud of Separation, which makes the survivors start the trial alone and therefore slows gen progression for a short time, or the Annotated Blueprint. So I know exactly where the hatch is at the end of the match, and can therefore set up a 4-kill that way. Establishing the fact that Sloppy Butcher is going to slow them down, and Thanathobia even more so, I try my best to go around the map and just hit as many survivors as I can to apply the status effects, like I said, in kind of like a drive-by hit-and-run technique. For that first hit, try and go in from behind a structure so they can't really see you uncloak, or body block while uncloaking to prevent them from going a certain direction. You can definitely pursue a wounded survivor if it's very obvious to you that you'll be able to kill them, but if the chase takes more than 20 seconds and the survivor has a lot of structure or pallets to move around, it won't really be worth chasing them for the down when their teammates can pop 1 or 2 gens during that time. Like I mentioned before, you have to know when to give chase and for how long, but you also need to know who to chase. If it's painfully obvious to you that the survivor you're chasing is highly skilled at looping and path prediction, it's usually more worth it to go for easier kills and get rid of them from the map as quickly as possible so that you'll have more time to chase that skilled survivor later on. When you've injured as many survivors as you can, looping back around to the generators, you're bound to find one, and that should be an easy one-hit kill. Now that you've hooked your first survivor, go on and check the other generators closest to them, then loop back to your hooked survivor, to check on them. Apparently it used to be so that borrowed time didn't really apply if the Wraith was still cloaked when the hooked survivor was unhooked, but I believe that was actually updated to nerf stealth killer, so that's not really a thing anymore. So to negate that, instead of tunneling the freshly unhooked survivor right away, who may or may not have borrowed time, go ahead and hook the survivor. Go ahead and hit the survivor that unhooked them. Go ahead and rinse and repeat this until you're down to your last 2 survivors, which is when you'll want to try and find the hatch. If the survivors have managed thus far to get 3 generators, the hatch will have spawned, and you want to go ahead and quickly close it after hooking that 3rd survivor. Keeping that in mind, you'll either want to hook that 3rd survivor close to the hatch, or let them bleed out and watch the hatch near their death, to prevent that 4th survivor from escaping through it. Finally, last but not least, it's important to just remain calm and have fun during the game, and to remember that you have the advantage over the survivors, not the other way around. If you stress out too much, especially when it seems that the match is just going too fast, the survivors are rushing gens, and you're another gen away from powered exit gates, you'll just want to give up. And I've been there. But just take a second to think about your next move. DBD is technically a strategy game after all, and keeping a cool and collected attitude will help you make decisions that can turn entire matches around. And that is it for this guide to rank 1 with Wraith. If you either enjoyed the video or found anything particularly useful, please leave a like, and thanks again for giving us a watch. Bye!